Good morning. I am so excited to be here with all of you today as Indianapolis Public Schools' first Chief Academic Officer. This position, created by Alicia Johnson, tells me and tells the community how much Indianapolis values teaching and learning at our schools. I'm honored to be here. I'm so glad to get back to Indianapolis. I missed it tremendously. I've been excited to get some goose sandwiches and some pizza from down the street at Basbo's for quite a while. So I'm really happy to be back. And I'm really happy to be with all of you, people that I've worked with for most of my career. As you all know, I spent 10 years here as a teacher, 5 years as a principal, and now, as I said, I'm honored to be your Chief Academic Officer to serve you, to serve our community, and of course, to serve our students. This is familiar to all of you, but it's important to begin with our mission. As it says, IPS empowers and educates all students to think critically, creatively, and responsibly, to embrace diversity, and to pursue their dreams with purpose. This still guides our work. This is still worthy work that we work towards every single day. I know that teachers do this, principals do this. Every level of the school is working toward this. This is also probably not new to you. This is actually from the 2019-2020 strategic plan. And while I know that we're now in the 2020-2021 school year, I think it's worthwhile looking back to see where we have been, what has guided our work, in order to talk about and think about where we want to move forward. So the district priorities, as outlined by Superintendent Johnson at that time, were focused on student-centered teaching and learning, high-performing team, racial equity mindset, school-centered central services, engaged families, teams and partners, and sustainable finances and operations. So what I've done is I've been thinking about planning my priorities as a Chief Academic Officer, is looking back to see what has motivated our district in the past. I've spent the last 4 months deep in conversation with teachers, school leaders, students, parents, community organizations, and just neighbors in Indianapolis to really think about and define what high quality teaching and learning looks like in our district and where we want to move toward and how we can get there, thinking about our community as an asset. So to pair with these 6 district priorities, I've created 6 teaching and learning priorities, and these are just coming from our purview within academics, Chief Academic Officer, but I think they're essential to our entire district, and I propose that we think about these things as integral and also ultimately essential in order to accomplish our district priorities. My 6 teaching and learning priorities, and I'll go through each of these specifically, so I'm not going to read them out at the onset, but I'll go through and talk about each of them, and they do pair with each of the 6 district priorities pretty specifically. I'll just read the headers of them. So first, we're thinking about ambitious teaching and learning in our district moving forward. We're looking at collaboration and leadership for teachers. We're working towards culturally responsive classrooms, environments, and curricula. We want central services to be instruction-centered. We want our community to be co-conspirators, so to speak, to be collaborators with us. And lastly, we want our finances and operations to be equitable and to be learning-centered. So this brings me to my proposed vision looking forward, 5 years. This is kind of what we're thinking about right now. And that is deeper learning for all. So basically what I'm thinking with deeper learning for all is that all levels of our organization will be learning. This isn't just for students, it's for teachers, it's for principals, it's for central office. The entire organization will be a learning organization. We'll be thinking about learning deeply. If we know anything about organizations, it's that any level of the organization is often predictive of what that organization looks like at higher levels. There's often symmetry between levels of organizations. And we see this now with our district. The way that our students are educated is often the way that our teachers are educated or unsupported, which is often how our principals are unsupported. So we see this in many, many ways. And I think if we focus on deeper learning at all levels of our organization, we will see results with our students, with our teachers, and with the efficiency of our organization as a whole. So the very first priority that I want to focus on with you today is ambitious teaching and learning. For this one, my hope is that we will set a vision for rigorous instruction and deep learning for all students in each subject, and that we support educators in this work. I'll go through and talk about what steps we'll take to begin this process. I think this is the most important step throughout all of these priorities, that if we do not focus on rigorous instruction in our classrooms, we will not see the kind of results that we hope to see. We will not have a learning organization if our students are not part of that deep, ambitious learning and teaching. And then teachers ultimately need to be supported in similarly ambitious learning situations. The following priority is collaboration and leadership. In the past, we have looked at teachers as kind of financial capital or value-added capital. I argue that we need to move away from that view of teachers, that mindset of teachers as kind of economic unit, to instead thinking about teachers as human capital that we need to develop, but that we also need to view as capital, as professional capital that is part of our system already. What this means is that we access them, we use them, we develop them as resources. From my conversations with teachers, this really rings true to them and how they have been viewed, how they feel like they've been viewed in the past, and how they would like to be viewed moving forward. They want to be collaborators. They want to work with other teachers. Right now, they feel like there's a major barrier between their work and the work of the administration and the district, and they see very little interplay there. They don't necessarily want more accountability, though. Accountability in the previous system was, again, just part of a value-added kind of measure of teachers that didn't view them as true human capital as part of the system. So a lot of research now is supporting the notion that by actually creating a positive workplace environment for teachers, by giving them true leadership roles, by giving them responsibilities, by distributing some of the leadership from the principal potentially to teachers, maybe ad hoc committees, but then also by creating peer-to-peer support networks within schools, students do better. This seems to teachers fairly intuitive, but I think to make that shift at a district level involves a lot of major changes. And some of these are technical changes, like around scheduling, but some of them are major mindset changes around what teachers are and what they can do. Thirdly, I want to focus on culturally responsive environments in teaching. The third priority from the district was about racial equity mindset, such a huge thing as we move forward, and as a city, but then also as a country. So this still must be a focus. I think if we want to do this at the teaching and learning level within schools, we really need to focus on culturally responsive teaching, which is going to involve a lot of work to just educate the entire community about what that looks like. There's still not necessarily consensus about what that looks like, but I think there are a lot of good resources out there that we can use to inform our work. There's a lot of model communities doing culturally responsive teaching that we can look to. Our community is diverse, and so what does culturally responsive teaching look like in a diverse community? That's something that we're going to have to spend some time looking at, but it's worthwhile to see and to dig into this for our students in particular. This goes, I think, hand in hand with the bias work that the district had proposed that we begin. I think that a lot of supported PD around that is going to help, but then I think by maybe doing a district read, there are a number of good books out there. I'll talk about that some more in my action steps on this. But we need spaces that are culturally affirming, that say specifically to students, we care about you. And ideally then we see that care coming back toward us. But we have to begin that process by saying, we care, we care. My fourth priority is instruction-centered central services. So the work of Meredith Honig from University of Washington in particular supports the idea that for district progress, for student outcomes at a district-wide level to improve, we need to have instructional leaders at all levels of our organization. So I want to make sure that we organize our district to create that, but then also to support that work. It's not enough to say to a principal, you must be an instructional leader, or, for example, even the superintendent to be an instructional leader. I see that as a lot of my work here as a chief academic officer to figure out how we can provide those supports, what kind of coaching is necessary at all of those levels of leadership. Fifth, I want us to reframe the conversation around community engagement to be thinking more about community collaboration. So I want us to view families, community organizations, and neighbors as assets and partners in the instructional work of the district. I'll talk some about specific moves that we can make later in the presentation, but I think this asset lens is the first major shift that we need to make. And this includes reframing some of the language from the district priority, which still is focusing on engagement and accountability. And I think if we approach communities with the language of accountability, we are, from the onset, not approaching them as assets. And they are incredible assets in our work. We all live in the community. We know what amazing asset our community is and the neighbors around our schools. We need to find ways to integrate them more into the work and view them as partners. My last priority is equitable learning center finances and finances and operation. So we need to look at the work of other districts who have used equitable distribution of resources to see how they did that, one, and then two, how we might use some of those same models for our work. And lastly, we need to always have a focus with our finances on teaching and learning. So I have created